That's right. With the release of Aquaman The Lost Kingdom at the end of 2023, the DCEU, DC Extended Universe, is officially done. Before James Gunn reboots everything, I wanted to take some time to look back at this sometimes bizarre experiment in cinematic franchising and talk specifically about what I think worked. In part 1, we looked at everything from Man of Steel to Aquaman 1, but there was plenty of DC goodness left. So let's get started with the second movie released in 2019 starring a character who was at one point called Captain Marvel. I'm talking about Shazam came out at exactly the right time. I'll say this first. As someone living in Philly when this movie came out, I really appreciate that it is set in Philadelphia. Now sure, they filmed this in Vancouver, probably for budget reasons, or maybe they feared for their safety following the 2018 Super Bowl. Either way, I was not under the illusion that this movie shot in town. Although they apparently did film the Lightning from My Hands bit on the steps of the art museum. But if you're like, but it looks fake. A, I don't see it. But B, it was fake because the day they came to Philly it was foggy and you couldn't see the city, so they needed to add it in post even though they were there. Perfect. And the final fight did feature a handful of Philly landmarks, including the head of the William Penn statue crashing into Love Park. And I remember after I saw the movie, I was able to walk to Love Park to check and see if the Penn statue could have possibly made the trip, and it could. But outside of the landmarks, I also felt it. The Philly spirit in Shazam. He wasn't Superman, or Batman, or even Aquaman. He was another superhero who most people in his universe wouldn't recognize. He didn't even have a name. Like, compared to everyone that came before this, Shazam was the hardest sell. Even Suicide Squad had the Joker. Shazam was, say it with me, an underdog. Adding to that underdog spirit was David F. Sandberg, YouTuber turned horror director given the opportunity to helm a $100 million superhero movie. And not only that, he needed to do something no one in the DCEU had done before, make the kids act good. This was the make or break point for this movie. The kids work, it's fun. The kids don't work. Either if the writing doesn't feel natural or the acting is stiff, this movie cannot recover. And again, great casting found two excellent leads in Asher Angel's Billy Batson and Jack Dylan Grazer's Freddie Freeman. Asher was playing a new type of Billy with a chip on his shoulder, and Jack was playing me when I was 14. And they both worked. Asher was able to sell the big emotional moments, and Jack was able to hold the two versions of Billy together and ground the movie in this new meta DCEU. And then Zachary Levi gave this movie a ton of personality as Shazam Billy. He was big, mature, and he felt like he was having fun on and off camera. This was the first DCEU movie that felt like a comedy first and an action movie second. And Levi has a lot of experience in that area between Chuck, Tangled, and of course Big Mama's House 2. Levi had great chemistry with Grazer, and apparently some of their back and forth was even improvised, which is cool. But some of the jokes in Shazam aren't just funny for a DCEU movie. They're some of the funniest moments in any superhero movie ever. Shazam not being able to hear Savannah, Shazam tossing the mattress under the bus, Freddy lighting Shazam on fire, Shazam blowing up that guy's phone. Get him, Batman. Santa's descent into madness. The security guard who all the kids admire. Shazam changing back to Billy so he can pee. One of the YouTube videos calling Shazam Zapped in America, which the implications of that don't make any sense. And of course, the big moment, say my name. Billy! This movie was full of great jokes, and the costume was awesome. I love how they incorporated the short cape and the hood. I think the gold Greek accents were a good throwback to Shazam's powers, and the vibrant red really helped set the tone. Sure, he has a lot of the same powers as Superman, but this movie is going to feel very different from Man of Steel. I also, and this is just me, think the muscle suit was a great idea. A, I think forcing these actors to become bodybuilders is dumb, and B, I liked how Shazam's strength felt artificial. It all came neatly packaged together, as opposed to all these other heroes who need to figure out their costume over the course of the movie as they find their identity. He got the identity first, you had to figure out everything else. But my favorite part of the costume is the bolt. Shazam practically looked like an action figure with a light up chest. And I love the way that Sandberg was able to use the bolt and smoke to set up cool shots that reveal the emblem first and then Shazam. And the bolt illuminating Shazam's face made for some Alex Ross-esque shots, which is always nice. But all of this would be for nothing if Shazam did not also have a ton of heart. It really laid that Vin Diesel family on thick, but it worked. The Shazamily felt like real people. Billy's reunion with his mom was heartbreaking, and it made the opening your heart to your family moment really effective. I'm not gonna lie, I shed a tear or two during this one, and not just because I too have taken the septa and ended up in what might as well be another dimension, but because this was what we needed. A heartwarming story of a superhero who does nice things. He saves people, comforts kids, and goes out of his way to help his friend. I liked it so much, I didn't even mind flossing. But speaking of children, let's look at another movie where the hero spends a lot of time with the child and also the big final fight is at a carnival. I'm talking about... Before this week, I had not rewatched Birds of Prey more than once or twice. It didn't make a huge impression on me. I don't know why. Probably has something to do with its release date in February of 2020. And the narrative around this one was that it was a failure. It bombed so bad that they changed the title. And since then, it hasn't really come up. Nothing that happened in Birds of Prey gets referenced in The Suicide Squad or any other DCEU movie. It's like Birds of Prey never happened. And then I went looking into it. It ran a solid 78 on Rotten Tomatoes, which, if it came out in 2023, would be a tie for DC's best reviewed movie of the year. And it made $205 million worldwide on a budget between $80 and $100 million. When you factor in advertising, it basically broke even. Making your money back is not bombing, and an R-rated semi-sequel to one of the worst superhero movies ever made, led by a cast of women, isn't exactly destined to break records. But that's all meta-narrative stuff. What about the movie itself? Was it good? Yes, I am prepared to say 100% full stop this is my second favorite movie the DCEU has produced. It rules. I truly think this was the first big budget superhero movie that was not for everyone. I'm not saying your average man wouldn't like it, I just mean pretty much every other comic book movie made by that time felt like it was attempting to appeal to everyone. Even stuff like Deadpool and Logan. Sure, kids couldn't see them in theaters, but those Deadpool jokes were aimed squarely at 12-year-old boys who managed to get a copy of Deadpool behind their parents' back. And Logan was a finale for one of the biggest superheroes of my generation. The themes, action, aesthetic, and characters were for everyone. Birds of Prey was not. You probably would not understand what Harley was going through if you haven't woken up hungover as hell and eaten the perfect bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich. You probably wouldn't empathize with Harley if you haven't gone out after a breakup and turned a bar upside down. And that's okay. Not every movie needs to be for every person. But luckily, if you, like me, are one of those people who gets it, pretty much everything about this movie rules. Like, this is where I realized Margot Robbie is a once-in-a-generation talent. She is able to turn out absolutely pitch-perfect performances in things like this, but also I, Tonya, Babylon, and Barbie. And at the same time, she throws herself into these roles. She learned roller derby to this one, which to be fair wasn't a huge departure from her I, Tonya ice skating training, but she also performed an impressive amount of acrobatic fight sequences. We give people like Tom Cruise a lot of credit for their death-defying stunts, which is fair, but I think Margot needs to be in that conversation for some of the things she's able to get away with as Harley Quinn. Now that is not to say Margot does not have an excellent stunt team behind her. Margot works with Renee Moneymaker, whose name you may recognize because her sister Heidi Moneymaker did most of Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow stunt work. And in an interview with Looper, Renee echoed that Margot is on another level. She is a specimen, said Moneymaker. She really is. You can demonstrate something, let her practice it like 3 times, and then she's got it. I caught her one time before she came into practice in the car, and she was reviewing reference videos from the training before. When she came in, she already knew the choreography. It was fresh in her head. It was just very impressive. She was next level with all that stuff. And on top of that, Warner Brothers brought in 8711, the team responsible for the John Wick movies, to coordinate the action, and it shows. The choreography is so slick, and every character has a unique style. Canary kicks, Helena is very precise, Renee is a brawler, and Harley's having fun, doing backflips, tossing weapons. Character led these fight scenes. I think there's a case to be made that the funhouse fight at the end of Birds of Prey might be one of the best comic book movie action sequences ever put to film. On a technical level, it is incredibly ambitious. Characters are on seesaws, trampolines, whatever these tongue things are. The room is small, so everyone needs to be fighting in the background of all the wide shots. Characters are also utilizing multiple weapons. There are more than a couple highly choreographed long takes where multiple heroes are interacting, and the whole fight ends on a revolving platform where one character is wearing roller skates. And it doesn't just look great, it tells a story. These women are able to come together and take care of each other, protect their little MacGuffin, and make each other better. I remember when the movie came out, a lot of people were pointing to the hair tie interaction as a moment that made this movie. Besides answering the classic fan complaint of everyone constantly being forced to flick their hair around, it shows why having all these women working together means something. It's these little moments in the middle of the big stuff where the personalities shine through and they become more than the sum of their parts. Also in the finale, love that Dinah did a proper canary cry. Originally, the plan was for it to be more of a sound that disarms everyone, but later they realized they needed a full shockwave that sent the remaining goons flying and propelled Harley forward, so they went for it. And I really appreciate that Birds of Prey did not tone down the comic booky stuff, at least not here. They did Canary justice in a way that felt natural. I guarantee this would have been a thing we were complaining about if they skipped it. And that final roller derby car chase is unbelievable. It's silly but also feels believably dangerous, and that's because it's so practical. Margot was even doing a bunch of this herself. This movie knows exactly what it is. It has so much goddamn style. The track is, as Kendall Roy would say, all bangers. It was a broad mix of hip-hop, alternative rock, rap, and some lounge covers by Journey Smollett, and nevertheless they all fit together naturally. Songs like Experiment on Me by Halsey, Danger by Juicy Fruit, and Feeling Good by Sophie Tucker all maintained this rebellious electric energy while all getting at ideas like independence and freedom. Like, I think this stands just behind Spider-Verse and Guardians in the best superhero movie soundtrack Hall of Fame. I mean, compare this to the soundtrack for Suicide Squad. This is how far we have come in 4 years. I'm also not a fashion guy, but goddamn were those outfits something. We've moved past the days where Harley Quinn shows you that she's crazy by wearing a child-sized shirt that says Daddy's Little Monster. This Harley wears whatever she wants. Everything is DIY. She's stealing caution tape from crime scenes and turning it into a jacket. It doesn't feel skimpy or exploitative, but it's not toned down either. You get the sense that you never know what this Harley is going to look like, but whatever she's wearing, you're going to be able to see it from a mile away. Then I don't want to ignore some of my favorite jackets I've seen in a movie. Roman Sionis looks terrific in his ridiculous outfits. The earthy velvet suit and monogrammed gloves really set Black Mask apart in a city filled with dynamic dresses. They sell him as a tacky trust fund kid who has to take over the family criminal empire and really just wants to run a fun nightclub. Yes, not every choice worked, but more than anything else, I appreciate Birds of Prey's balls. It went for it, and sometimes that pays off. And sometimes... Listen, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that Wonder Woman 84 was great, or that it was a worthy successor to the original Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 84 had quite a few problems that stemmed from some pretty bizarre choices, but in this video, we're talking about good things. So let's start at the beginning. This costume is great. I'd say this is the best looking Wonder Woman costume on screen. I think the original one fits that period, but this feels like the best adaptation of the Wonder Woman costume from the comics. I like that she ditches the shield and sword in favor of more reliance on the lasso and some of her other weapons. In fact, this opening action sequence was pretty much perfect. Looked good, the period was represented well, everyone looks like they're in that version of the 80s that only exists in movies. Diana uses the lasso to get around. I love using the tiara as a boomerang to kill the cameras. Just overall, this is great. Fun, bright, slick, feels like something out of the Raimi Spider-Man movies. And I think if the movie really lent into this instead of transitioning to a dark fight against, well, we'll get to her, it could have worked. I also enjoy the fight scene in the White House where Diana is actively not trying to kill the Secret Service agents. Using the lasso to do other things like as a shield is fun. And then this caravan fight with Diana running on the highway has some very interesting moments. I love how much Diana is at a disadvantage here. There are multiple encounters where you believe she could be killed, but she's also using her abilities creatively, making the truck into a shield, popping the axle, and throwing herself into the air. That is cool. I don't know. These three scenes are what I want from a Wonder Woman movie. She's fast, bright, and powerful, but not unbeatable. I think the performances in this one mostly hold up. While I know Gal got memed for some of her more Schwarzeneggerian lines,
I need you to give me the stone.
I think she hit the emotional beats well. And while I didn't love the decision to resurrect Steve for the second movie in the series, I think Chris Pine is again a ton of fun. And while I don't know if I loved anything Cheetah was doing, I think the mild-mannered Barbara Minerva did really work for Kristen Wiig. I bought that character's spirit and I really understood what she wanted and why. But the standout performance in this one is clearly Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord. Now, do I feel a little bad signaling out the man as the most memorable performance in this Wonder Woman movie? A little. It's kind of like Ken in Barbie. This is not any shade on the rest of the team, but this character is written in such a way that as long as the actor commits, they get to steal every scene. And boy does Pedro Pascal commit. His energy as Lord is incredible. He spends basically the entire movie at an 11. Lord has that wonderful manic intensity fueled by his desperation and then his health being sapped by the Dreamstone. I love the scenes where he's trying to be charming. And I really enjoy his speech at the end where he's just yelling the word every couple of sentences. That's cool. I think his hair and suits are fun. Yeah, there just wasn't much to not like about Lord. Is he the most faithful version of his comic counterpart? Not really. But it felt like they took enough of the essential Lord qualities. He is a slimy 80s rich guy and fit him nicely into this story. Some little moments. I love when the robbers try to convince their panicking friend not to drop the kid. I like the shot of Diana holding the guy by his ankle and smiling at the little girl. I think Lord and Barbara palling around is cute. As a big Taskmaster fan, I appreciated seeing Series 6's awesome Chowdhury. I like that Simon Stagg is in this, and they basically did his silly comic book hair. Steve try-on clothes is fun. Love this kick in the White House. Love when Diana hits the bullet at Lord. Diana using the lasso to move the chair to catch the guy is perfect. I like a fight like this where the hero's taking a lot of hits. Diana riding the lightning is cool. And I love everything Pedro Pascal is doing in front of the wind machine. Yeah, the back half of this movie makes no sense and it doesn't even kind of fit into the other DCEU canon, but still, there was some good stuff here and that is what this video is all about. Speaking of good stuff. First up, it's wild that this got made. The conditions were perfect for this and only this. On one hand, you had an enthusiastic fan base that was crystal clear about how much they wanted to see this through. And on the other hand, you have a global pandemic that ground every other production to a halt. Warner needed to make something that they didn't really need to film, so we got this. Now, I've already made a video about how Zack Snyder's Justice League is a marked improvement over the 2017 version, but that sort of works with the 2017 one as a base Justice League, where in reality this, Zack Snyder's Justice League, is the real one. So I'm gonna look at ZSJL as if it's its own thing. Although a lot of things that really work here are things that 2017 Justice League just chooses not to do. And I get it, because I don't know if a 2-hour-long version of this would have worked. And 2017's Justice League came out before Endgame, Avatar 2, and Oppenheimer made 3+ hour-long movies not only palatable to theater audiences, but sort of a new level of prestige. Like, I wonder if Warner Brothers took their time with Justice League, and it came out after Aquaman and a different solo Flash movie than the one we got, if they could have gotten away with releasing a 4-hour-long Justice League movie in theaters in like 2022. Maybe. I guess we'll never know. But okay, some good things. I think the flashback where the humans, Amazons, Atlanteans, gods, and a Green Lantern fight Darkseid is pretty cool. It's cool that this universe got a Green Lantern, and it's wild that they chose to give Ares the David Thewlis face. Darkseid looks pretty cool in this, although I found the Omega symbol on his chest quite upsetting. And yeah, because this is a Zack Snyder movie, I've just gotta say, the whole thing looks good. It becomes very easy to directly compare ZSJL to 2017's Justice League and go, oh yeah, that's how that's supposed to look. Suits, specifically. Batman's suit looks so much better. Aquaman's suit, the cyborg design. Everything about Steppenwolf works way better here. I think his spiky body is very weird but distinct, and that's what matters. And I loved when he Skypes to Darkseid via Desaad. One of my favorite tropes is a boss who just will not give an underling they do not respect the time of day. The Megatron-Starscream relationship, so I love watching it here. Flash entering the Speed Force, the most cheer-worthy moment in film history apparently. It was cool, and it looks way better than it does a little later in The Flash. Like, yes, they're doing different things, but this effect is just so clean. I love this scene where Wonder Woman saves the kids. It's the perfect mix of speed and precision. And then she absolutely lays out Bruce Bolton. I think this movie does some really fun things with The Flash, especially in his weird little intro, which I didn't love all of, but some of the details were great. The glass slowly shattering, Barry making little potholes in the street. I love how destructive Barry can be. And I love that he doesn't mention brunch to anyone. That's good. Cyborg is interesting here. I think you can make a strong arc out of the fact that Cyborg does not feel human, and this version of Justice League lent into that. Ray Fisher's performance was good. I kind of wish we saw him in at least one more of these, like The Flash or Shazam 2 or something like that. Is this my favorite DCEU movie? No, but goddamn do I respect it. Zack leaves Justice League because of a family tragedy, and after 4 years, a determined group of fans is able to convince Warner Brothers to let Zack see his vision through. And it works. What was once a cringy product rushed out the door to get CEOs bigger bonuses became a celebration of the human and metahuman coming together under one singular creative vision. But since you asked about my favorite DCEU movie, time for I believe, and I think many of you are going to agree with me, that The Suicide Squad is the best DCEU movie. Just start to finish, it's the best one. I know plenty of that comes down to just taste, but also I've seen the Letterboxd lists and this is at the top of quite a few of them. I do think that it certainly helps that 2016 Suicide Squad did a lot of things wrong. It was the ultimate goofus. They didn't kill enough team members, the mission didn't make any sense, and they didn't feel like a team or a family or anything like that. So if the Suicide Squad was able to do those things correctly, be off to a great start. And lucky for us, not only did it get everything right that 2016 Suicide Squad got so wrong, 2021's The Suicide Squad also made many choices nobody expected that turned it into a fun, touching, completely one-of-a-kind ride. So off the top, the scene where Squad A all dies, with the exception of Rick Flag, Harley, and I guess Weasel, is everything I've always wanted from one of these. Villains are dropping like flies. Some have a power that's so dumb they're basically an armless target. Some are such loose cannons that they get themselves killed. And some, like my boy Digger, are caught in the middle of the chaos. Amanda Waller even blows up one of their heads. I love how much this messed with audiences who thought this was Pete Davidson's next big moment. And man, this movie was pretty gross. I'm not going to show it because I don't want this video to get demonetized, but this movie felt fully R-rated in a way that was both necessary for establishing the stakes and also just plain old silly fun. Obviously, the standout here was John Cena as Peacemaker, when an absolutely inspired choice to both have Peacemaker on this squad and choose who might be the best wrestler turned actor to play him. John Cena turns this role into something so memorable. It's the perfect mix of stone cold serious delivery that works as scary when it needs to, but can also be hilarious. Polka Dot Man was also an inspired choice, and one only James Gunn could make. Apparently, a big part of choosing Polka Dot Man came from the character's ultimate D-list status. Gunn said, "Seriously, I would look up like who are considered the dumbest supervillains of all time on Google, and at the top of every list was Polka Dot Man." But James didn't just throw Abner in for one quick sight gag like with Arms Fall Off Boy. David Dastmalchian's Polka Dot Man got a small arc including a sympathetic backstory, some luminescent body horror, and at least one big superhero moment. And now we live in a world where your average action movie fan is aware of who Peacemaker and Polka Dot Man are, and they like them. Wild. But this movie was also the opportunity for the redemption of Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag. Cause sure, technically this was the same character from 2016's Suicide Squad, but in the 5 years between that and 2021's The Suicide Squad, Flag became a completely different person. One with charisma, and with a sense of humor, and one with a purpose. I've said it before, but it is a genius move for our reintroduction to Flag to involve him offering us a friendly handshake. The fact that I got genuinely upset when Rick Flag died is an achievement for Gunn and Kinnaman. But this is a James Gunn project, so the rest of the cast was also great. Daniela Melchior gave its new version of Ratcatcher a lot to root for. Stallone as King Shark was fun. Peter Capaldi was a great thinker. And of course, Margot and Viola brought everything that worked in 2016's Suicide Squad to this one. And then Idris Elba did a wonderful job supporting these wacky characters. He grounded them without taking the fun out of the big moments. And his arc of accepting the squad being symbolized by his embrace of the rat in the helicopter was very cute. As usual, the action also ruled here. Two scenes in particular really work. Harley's escape was excellent. Bloody as hell, but fun. A mix of mania, improvisation, and precision. And then the javelin acrobatics are electric. Like I said earlier in the video, Margot Robbie is a once-in-a-generation talent. Like, she did the key stunt herself, because Margot Robbie can do anything. And then you've got the Flag Peacemaker fight. Brutal, thrilling, and tragic. This shot of the reflection on the helmet is one of the most creative in an already quite creative film. And I love how much the balance of power shifts during the fight. You really get a sense that either of them could win at a few key moments, which makes that ending incredibly heartbreaking. Also, gotta commend Gunn on making a Suicide Squad movie where the Suicide Squad is doing something it would only make sense for the Suicide Squad to do. It wasn't just killing a supervillain who was trying to destroy the Earth. It was the team performing a covert mission to sabotage a superweapon, and more importantly, destroy evidence that implicated America in the creation of the superweapon. Not only were the Justice League not already around here since Corto Maltese isn't anywhere near Gotham or Central City, but Waller wouldn't want the JLA to learn about her failure to contain Starro, so they couldn't show up because Waller would never call them. Makes complete sense. And like half of them died. Flag, Polka Dot Man, Boomerang, and the rest of the A-Squad, the Thinker, and of course Milton all kicked it. Peacemaker seemed to die, but his performance was so good that he survived even though he's not a metahuman, was bleeding out from a shot to the throat, and he was in Jotunheim when this happened. It was that good. As with all of these, the costumes were a huge improvement. Loved Harley's original suit and the dress. Polka Dot Man was a smart reinterpretation of that look. Peacemaker seemed to pop right out of the page. And I love that Rick Flag finally got to wear his yellow shirt. Effects-wise, King Shark looked terrific. So did Starro, whose inclusion in the movie was a wonderful surprise. I liked the polka dot effect a lot, and the flowers in the Harley vision looked great. I think it was a solid choice to have the boomerangs glow, and I think the army of rats was both cute and gross. And the message of the whole thing, delivered by Taika's Ratcatcher 1 about how everyone can have a purpose, even rats. That is some good Suicide Squad. Some other moments I love. Pete Davidson selling him out is fun. I really like the revelation that there's another squad. Sean Gunn made a fine calendar man. I think it's funny when Peacemaker calls Ratcatcher a millennial. The murder contest was cool. This line.
No one likes to show off.
Unless what they're showing off is dope as
It's true.
Loved the face everyone makes when they realize they killed the good guys. The visuals in the Harley story rule, the birdcage specifically. Really like when King Shark tried on in disguise. Everyone getting drunk at the bar was great. Scenes like those are really helpful in making these teams feel like real people. I loved the title transitions. It was great to see King Shark rip a dude in half. Harley saying,
"Oh, that guy, Milton."
It was very funny. The visual of Harley and the rat swimming through Starro's eye is bonkers, and the payoff with the javelin overall is great. Yeah, I mean, it's the best DCEU movie. Definitely my favorite. That's why I have complete faith in James Gunn turning this franchise around. And if that wasn't proof enough, let's look at... Okay, so I don't think there are very many people I need to convince that Peacemaker is great. It's funny, it's raw, the costumes are great, the villains are great, it's just really, really good. It also barely counts anymore since it seems like Peacemaker is going to make his way to the new DCU, which will mean scenes like this Justice League cameo just don't count. And I mean, that Superman could absolutely just be retconned to be David Corenswet. And whoever ends up playing Wonder Woman, that could be her. And that's Lobo in an Aquaman costume. And that's Ambush Bug in a Flash costume. Or the scene never happened. Either way, Peacemaker rocked. The more I learn about Peacemaker, the more I am convinced that John Cena is the male version of Margot Robbie. Just an absolute once-in-a-generation talent who can sell drama, comedy, and fight choreography, all while singing, dancing, and playing the piano. Every interview spoke to Cena being incredibly focused and efficient while also taking big risks. He was vulnerable in a way that many big actors with even bigger reputations are not. The character of Chris was all over the place in a good way. He was silly, pathetic, lovable, miserable, irritating, and on top of all of that, he was trying. We meet a character that realizes this is not working, but doesn't know another way to be. Chris is a wonderful basket of contradictions, and Cena is able to turn this once one-dimensional D-lister into a real guy who we can root for. And again, like with The Suicide Squad, this is James Gunn's baby. He wrote the series and directed 5 of the 8 episodes. And you could feel the Gunn in this thing. The jokes are either really clever or incredibly simple. The characters have real problems. They're a bunch of angry outcasts saving the world by loving each other. The violence is extreme, the music is nostalgic, the bad guy is daddy issues. James Gunn. But this is not just the Gunn and Cena show. The two standouts flank John in what might be the greatest TV show intro ever made, which you remember the first time you saw this? What the f? We could have just been doing this the whole time? And instead we do a piano slowly panning over a landscape. Prestige TV. Get it together. Also, Wigwam, the band that sings Do You Want to Taste It, is fun. A couple of their songs have made it onto my running playlists. And that choreography was done during COVID lockdown by Carissa Barton, who managed to tap into the heart of the Peacemaker spirit with a mix of modern dance and street style that she described as living claymation. And fun fact, her husband, who she used as a guinea pig, was none other than Clayface himself, Alan Tudyk. But back to actors in Peacemaker. The two standouts. First, Danielle Brooks plays Leota Adebayo, the daughter we never knew Amanda Waller had, who's brought on Team Peacemaker to keep Chris in line. I love how she's just basically a person. Has a wife, pets, is not a super secret ultra badass, doesn't need to prove herself by turning into a super hard assassin. She pulls the team in the other direction, more introspective, questioning their mission and their methods. I don't think this works if Brooks is not able to hold her own on screen against Cena, but her heart and sincerity give Adebayo the power to make their relationship believable. And she's funny. Lines like,
Where's Vigilante?
Vigilante? That was Vigilante?
Shut up.
He had something to do, I don't know.
and then there's Adrian Chase, played by... Well, originally, this role went to an actor named Chris Conrad. You may recognize him from the show The Patriot. But after filming 5 episodes as Chase, Conrad left Peacemaker. We don't know why. Some difference of opinion between Conrad and Gunn seems to be on somewhat amicable terms. But they were still down one vigilante. So Gunn brought on Pitch Perfect's Freddie Stroma, who went back and reshot all of the scenes Cena filmed with Conrad. And I don't know what the Chris Conrad vigilante would have been like, but I can't imagine he brought the same dorky energy to Chase that made Stroma's version the breakout star of the show. He was thoroughly weird, a sociopath who wants nothing more than to kill jaywalkers and be Peacemaker's best friend. Did every Vigilante joke work for me? Of course not, but enough did that Vigilante almost always had my favorite line of each episode, and easily my favorite line of the series.
It gives you pleasure too, Peacemaker. That's because we're born killers. What separates us from other killers is we only kill bad people. Usually. Unless there's a mistake.
And yes, I know this is not the most faithful adaptation of comic Vigilante, but in my opinion, as long as the character works in the story, I don't really care. It's sort of, but not exactly the same deal as Drax or Mantis in Guardians. Is that how you would expect our comic counterparts to act? Not exactly, but the performances are so much fun and serve interesting roles in the story, so what's more important than that? And the other crazy thing about this performance that I didn't realize until after I started watching the show, Freddy's British. Very British. And yet, a flawless American accent. Like truly, you would never once guess this guy was not born in Nebraska or something. Just a fantastic performance. Also, I think this goes without saying at this point because we've come to expect it from Gunn, but the action rules. I'm just gonna share a couple shots over the course of this next sentence that show how creative this series is. I mean, right? Oh, that's pretty good. Oof, this one's my favorite. I think we knew we were in for something special after this scene. It started with Chris giving us some very sad karaoke, followed by a fight in his tighty whities where Chris gets stabbed, clotheslined, and thrown through a wall. But we also had time for silly moments like this one where Chris uses defensive perfume. It's incredibly well choreographed, features some great stunt work by Cena's go-to stunt guy, Spencer Thomas, and the camera never stops moving. We are right there with them in this tight one-bedroom every step of the way. There are so many nice things to say about Peacemaker. I love the costumes. I love Eagly, how dangerous he is and how sweet he is. I loved that Peacemaker fucks men and women. I love all the stupid helmets. I love that this is where most of us met Chikwudia Wuji, the eventual High Evolutionary. I like the crazy fight scene between Hardcore and Judo Master. I loved how Economos tried to vault a small fence and broke his leg. I loved that Economos name-dropped Batmite. And I love the fan theory that this is Batmite, an annoying little guy who doesn't stop talking about Batman. I love how Peacemaker calls that one girl in a denim jacket Canadian tuxedo. I loved when Vigilante casually tossed a knife at the guy that shot him. But most of all, I love the characters and how they helped each other. By the end of the series, they really felt like people with real problems who were able to get better, find a little bit of happiness. And I love that. And I also loved when he shot that shield. So things were really cooking. Theaters were opening up, and some of DC's biggest movies, starring, frankly, the biggest stars on planet Earth, were on the horizon. Next video, we're going to start with Batgirl. That's right, we got to talk about Batgirl. We're going all the way to Aquaman 2. One last thing, I want to talk to you about this video sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is an aggregate site that shows you how the media around the world is covering any single story, and compares and contrasts their coverage based on their political leanings and who owns that publication. Each story comes with a quick visual breakdown of the political bias, factuality, and ownership of the source's reporting, all backed by ratings from 3 independent news monitoring organizations. So for instance, you can look at the story about how United Auto Workers in Tennessee are working towards unionization. You can see there are 21 sources. Ground News shows you which ones tend to lean left, right, and center. And you can see how different sites cover the story. Got some of the sources on the right frame this as the unions planning to take over the auto industry, while the ones on the left seem to focus more on the workers themselves. It's interesting. They've got an entire section devoted to the 2024 election, and a blind spot section where you can look at stories specifically disproportionately reported on by one side or the other. And listen, do you need to read everything on the other side of the political spectrum? No, but I do think it's useful for just understanding what people are talking about, because without that, we really are kind of living in 2 different worlds. So go check them out. I think Ground News is so useful that I am offering 40% off their Vantage subscription. You can only access this discount through my link, so go to ground.news/NandoVMovies or click the link in the video description and support an independent news platform working to make the media landscape more transparent. As always, I've got to say thank you to everybody who continues to support the channel on Patreon, everybody that watches these videos early and ad-free on Nebula, everybody who listens to my podcast, Mostly Nitpicking, everybody that follows me on Twitter. I'm NandoVMovies all over the internet. That's all I got. Stay safe. I'll see you next time.